If you love to decorate with snowmen during the holiday season, then I know you're going to love today's projects. I hope you enjoy. For the first project, I'm using one of these pieces of styrofoam that you can find at Dollar Tree. It's shaped like this. You want the smallest part at the top, the largest one at the bottom. I'm also using some greenery that I already had on hand. This came from Walmart, and actually all of the floral pieces that I will be using in this project I already had. Most of them came from either Walmart or Dollar Tree. I'm pushing them in at the very bottom, making sure that they don't come out the other side or through the bottom. I just want it to fan out like this, and I use 7 pieces. I'm using 2 of these bundles, and I want to place one on each side in between those 2 greenery pieces. I have 2 more bundles, and I believe these did come from Walmart. They're really beautiful, have a lot of detail to them. I am going to trim those down, and I want to place those right in between the 2 greenery pieces and beside the red berries. So I'm going to put one on the right hand side and one on the left hand side, which is really going to make this full and beautiful in the front. Now, because I didn't have 2 more of those picks, I need to fill in some in the back, but I do have these picks from Dollar Tree, but I am going to remove the red birds as well as the metal clips so that I can place these on the back side, and it's going to fill that in very nicely. I have some greenery pieces that I pulled off of a bundle. I believe this came from Hobby Lobby. I want to place this in between the longer greenery pieces just to give it a little bit of a variation and also kind of fill that in instead of those greenery pieces just kind of sticking out on their own. It's just going to make it nice and full. Once I place those in between each of those greenery pieces, this is how it's looking. Now for the top, the center of our centerpiece, there's a couple of different options. You could use a snowman head ornament from Dollar Tree. That would be really pretty. I'm actually going to be using this Christmas tree topper for $3 that I found at Dollar General. It has a nice plastic piece on the inside where you would put it on top of your tree. You could also use it as an ornament, but since I'm not going to be doing that, I did remove the hanger. Now you can hot glue this into your styrofoam and then kind of fluff some of your greenery around, and this is how this beautiful centerpiece turned out. For this project, you'll need 3 different sized pumpkins. Go ahead and remove the stem and set those to the side. We don't need them for this project. I am going to be using a wooden dowel and inserting that in the center of the largest pumpkin first. Then I could cut that down. You just want that to be high enough to be able to place your other 2 pumpkins on top, but you don't want it to come through the very top pumpkin. So once you have that smaller pumpkin at the very top, it should be looking like this. I'm going to paint mine with a white chalk paint, and it is probably going to be easier if you painted each of your pumpkins before you put the dowel on there, because I did have to separate mine a little bit to make sure that I was able to get the paint all underneath each one of the pumpkins. This will likely take 2 coats to get some full coverage on this piece. After I applied the second coat and allowed it to dry, my largest pumpkin has this texture to it, and I just love how that turned out. And I want to recreate a little bit of that texture on the top 2 pumpkins. So to do that, I'm going to mix some of my chalk paint with some baking soda and get that nice and thick, almost like a paste. And then I will apply this all over those top 2 pumpkins and a little bit on the bottom pumpkin to kind of help blend it in. It's going to give it a really nice texture and make it look almost like concrete. To make sure I did have the texture in between, I did separate the pumpkins and apply the baking soda paint mixture there, then went back and hot glued all of these pieces to the dowel to make sure it was nice and sturdy. I went back over it and kind of touched up certain areas, and then I'm going to let it completely dry. I'm using some scrap fabric that I already had on hand. This larger piece measures about 11 3/4 of an inch by 10 1/2 inches. I'm going to flip it over to the back side and fold it up about 1/4 of an inch all the way across. Then I can run hot glue right along the very edge on one side, fold that up so that it will seal and make this faux seam. Then I repeat that on the opposite side. It's just going to give it a really clean edge when you flip it over. Use whatever color fabric you want. I thought this would be perfect to make a long sleeping cap for our snowman. So I want it to drape downwards in the front of the snowman's face and then kind of go more towards the back. So to do that, I'm going to place some hot glue right there at the top. Then I can glue it down at an angle a little bit on each side. Hold it in place long enough for the hot glue to set up, and then once you flip it over to the back side, we're going to pull it over and see where the two pieces overlap. Just depending on how big the top pumpkin is, you may have to trim some of your fabric down. You don't want to have too much of an overlap. Then you can go back and glue that left side down, let that set up, and then glue your right side down. Then you want to pull it over to the side, and where the two pieces are kind of overlapping, you just want to add a dot of glue, not too much, just enough to tack it in place so that they don't come apart. I did that in the middle and at the very top. I'm going to cut a piece of twine, flip it over to the front side, and a little ways down from the top, gather the fabric together so it looks like this. Then where it's gathered together, I could wrap the twine around it, double knot it, and then I'm going to tie just a very simple bow. I'll trim the ends of the bow off of the twine, and then at the very end piece of that fabric, I'm going to cut it or make several cuts to kind of make it look like almost a pom-pom at the end. Then you'll want to fluff it out a little bit so it's kind of going to look like this. Then when you turn it around, you just kind of pinch it in the middle and flop it over to the side, and it's going to look like an adorable sleeping cap. I didn't have a long enough piece of that fabric, so I glued two pieces together, and I want to use this to place between the top two pumpkins to make a scarf. I'm just going to pinch it right there and kind of squeeze it between the two pumpkins, then pull the longer strand around the shorter strand, so it's going to look like this. Then I decided to trim the scarf off a little bit. I thought it was a little too long. Then I can go back and make tiny cuts just like I did with the sleeping cap to kind of separate it and make it look more like a scarf. So this is how it's looking so far. Using an oil-based Sharpie marker, or you could use a regular Sharpie marker, I'm going to create two eyes. And then I'm going to use a popsicle stick, just a regular craft stick, to create the nose. I held that up in place to see about how long I wanted to make it, and I cut the end of that off with my handheld miter shears. I felt like it was a little too long, so I did trim that down a little bit. Then I'll go over it with some sandpaper to smooth it out. To paint it, I'm going to put a piece of painter's tape down, sticky side up, and then tape each end of that. It's just going to make it really easy for me to paint this really small piece, and I will paint this on both sides because I know that the end of the carrot nose you may be able to see from one side. Once that is dry, I can then hot glue this to the snowman's face, and then I'm going to use my oil-based Sharpie to create a bunch of little dots to create his little smile. Or in this case, his really big smile. How adorable is he? Then I'm going to finish that off with a couple of navy colored buttons that came from Dollar Tree, and this is how he turned out. For this project, I'm using a wooden candlestick that you can find at Hobby Lobby, and a lot of times you can find them when they're on sale. I'm using my staple lifter to remove the candle cup, set it to the side. I'm not going to use it in this project. I'm going to give this entire candlestick one coat of white chalk paint and allow that to thoroughly dry before taking some red acrylic paint in the color Flag Red. I want to paint some details at the bottom and top of this candlestick. I'm using a detail brush to very carefully go around the top and bottom part of that section. Then I can fill that in with a wider brush. This will take 2 coats to get really good coverage for this beautiful red color. And then I'm going to let it completely dry so it's looking like this. I'm using a snowman head. This came from Dollar General and it does light up. This is so cute. I think I paid just a couple of dollars for it and I thought it would be perfect on this candlestick. To attach it to the top, I'm going to use some E6000 for a permanent hold and then some hot glue for that temporary hold. I do want the head to tilt back just a little bit and I'll hold that in place till it sets up. Look how cute it is so far. Now we're going to decorate it with some ribbon. I have some ribbon from Dollar Tree that says Merry Christmas and it has a snowflake on it. And I'm going to cut it right below that snowflake at the end by folding it over and cutting a dovetail. And then at the top part where the snowflake is, I want to add a dot of hot glue so that I'll be able to pinch this together at the end and make it flat. So it's going to look like this, because I want to attach that to the side of the top of the candlestick. So as it flows down, you'll be able to read the Merry Christmas part. So it's looking like this. Now I want to add something right there at the top of the candlestick. So using some red satin ribbon from Dollar Tree, I am just going to make a simple bow, cut the ends at an angle, glue that in the front to look like a cute little bow tie. For this project, I'm using 2 of Dollar Tree's white Christmas trees. I am going to pull all of the branches to one side on one of the trees. So on the back side, it's going to be really flat like this and nice and full on the front. I'll do the exact same thing with the other tree, because I want to attach these 2 together to make one full tree. You will need to remove the base from one of the trees, and you won't be able to set them together like this. One of the trees, the metal piece will have to sit up at the top like this. So one of them will be a little bit taller, but you can fix that with the branches later on. To attach the 2 pieces together, I'm going to take some zip ties and wrap it around the 2 metal bases between the trees at the bottom, the top, and the middle. And of course, don't forget to go back and cut off those excess zip ties. Then you can go through and rearrange your branches to make this tree look nice and full, and you won't be able to tell that one's a little bit taller than the other. Then at the very top, I'll take those 2 long pieces, twist them together, and fold them over. Then we can attach the feet for the base at the bottom so you can set it up and make sure your tree's nice and straight. If you haven't guessed already, we're going to make a snowman tree. I'm using 3 of the smallest red ornaments from Dollar Tree. I just placed hooks on those and attached them on the 3 branches going straight down in the front. For the arms, you have 2 options. You can use some of these white branches from Dollar Tree, which I felt were just a little bit of an off-white. And then I have these silver ones from Dollar Tree, which I think are going to work a lot better. So I'm going to cut 2 of those off and place them on the side for his arms, and they stick in there really nicely. You don't even have to attach them to anything. For the head, I'm going to use that tree topper head from Dollar General. Place that on the very top, and I just love how all of this red is going together. For the bottom, I'm going to use this metal tree skirt from Dollar Tree. Now it does say Farm Fresh Christmas Tree, so I want to turn this around so that this is showing in the front. And I have several different materials I can use once I place the tree inside of that metal skirting to kind of go over it to cover up the base. I am actually going to be using the snow blanket from Dollar Tree, which has all this pretty little glitter in it. And of course, you could add some lights to it if you like. I hope you enjoyed today's projects, and if you have a favorite, please let me know in the comment section down below, because I always love to know which one is your favorite. If you haven't subscribed already, I would love for you to click that subscribe button right below the video. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Please take care, and I will see you guys next time.